Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well and welcome to this course. In this course we are going to talk about Python ethical hacking, and we are going to discuss about penetration testing for network administrators, system administrators, ethical hackers, and we are going to discuss about Python scripting related to security tests and cybersecurity. So join me, I'm waiting for you, and thank you for listening. Okay, first of all about this course. In this course we are going to download and install Visual Studio Code. And obviously you can search for Microsoft Code or VS Code, and you will find a link related to that. And on Windows operating systems you can download and install it. So simple. And Linux or Mac OS you can download and install it, obviously. And because this is a code editor, obviously we can have Python codes and then execute the code, and so simple to have all scripts, Python scripts and everything, and in different files, and edit the codes and have a code editor like this. So it's so important to download and install it. And I should say that we need Python too. And if you search for Python, for instance, for Windows operating system, you will see the link to download from here. As you can see here, official website Python, and the latest version 3.12. If you download and install it, you will find the link from here. Or if you search on the internet, for instance, for Linux operating system or Mac operating system, obviously you will find the links available, which are all available, and you can download and install it. And I will show you how to install it. It's so simple. Okay, on Windows operating system, if you are going to download and install Visual Studio Code or VS Code, you may find it from the link as you can see here. And we need to download Python too. Python from here, the link as you can see here, Windows installer, and then you will have the files like this, Visual Studio Code and Python. And to install it, for instance on Windows 10 or 11, just double click to install it. Okay, accept, next, and next, and as you can see, okay, from here, next and install. So simple to install it. Okay, finish. And for Python installation, just double click, and from here install. Use admin privileges when installing, and it's important to mention that add python.exec to path, and from here you can install it. And so simple. Okay, and close it. And Visual Studio Code, let's see. Okay, from here, new open folder, for instance. Okay, and desktop, new folder, tests, like this, and select folder, and you will see. Okay, and from here, okay, new folder, for instance, lab, and new file like test.py, and let's see if it works or not without any problem. Just save it, and from run, start debugging. And what is important here to find Python extension. Okay, so let's see, and as you can see here, install Python extension. Okay, just install it. Okay, and right now run from here, start debugging, and let's see Python debugger, Python file, and let's see what happens. And you can see it's working. So on Windows operating system, what we need is to just install Python and VS Code. Okay, on Ubuntu operating system it's so simple too, and from here update and software update, for instance, or Ubuntu software. Okay, and from here you can search for VS Code, and you will see Visual Studio Code, and from here you can install it. Right now, because I install Visual Studio, I can just update it or remove it. Okay, so as you can see, and there's no problem with the installation. So simple to install on Ubuntu. Okay, and it's working. And what is important is to download and install Python, which is very important right now. So from terminal, okay, if I just type apt update first of all, okay, and after that sudo apt install Python, and like this. So I'm waiting for installation to complete. Okay, now completed. You can check it with Python version. If you are going to install Python 3.12, okay, with the command sudo add apt repository, we can first of all update or add the repository. Okay, and press enter. Okay, completed. And after that sudo apt update, and yes. And after that, if you type apt install Python 3.12, as you can see here, sudo apt install Python 3.12, and yes, and wait for installation to complete. And you can see completed. And with the command we can check it, Python 3.12 version. And from here, to see if it's working or not, from here open folder on desktop, and then create another folder here like test for instance. Okay, and open it and create a folder and a file like test.py. Okay, test.py for instance, like this, and print hello like this, and see if it's working or not. Install Python extension here. Okay, and now completed. And from here run, start debugging, Python debugger. Let's see what happens. And you can see it's working. So simple to install Python and VS Code on Ubuntu operating system. And you can download and install it on Mac OS too. Okay, about this course, everything you may find, all commands and codes and everything on GitHub and the repository. As you can see here, repositories we have Udemy Python, and Udemy Python we have Python Ethical Hacking, Pentest, and in this folder we have all files and everything, codes and scripts. So you may find it from here. Okay, let's see some basic Python scripts or codes. So we are going to just review Python codes to see how different Python codes work first of all, before starting to talk about security and pen test with Python. So as you can see here, test number 1 from here, this code calculates the area of a rectangle, for example, based on user input for the lengths and widths, and it defines a function, as you can see here, calculate area we have here to perform the calculation, and the main function we have to handle user input and display. So first of all, we are going to have a function, as you can see here. Okay, and when you are going to define a function, first of all, with the functions we can, for instance, have different functions, and as you can see here, inputs, different inputs, for instance, lengths and width from here, and area we are going to calculate area based on lengths and widths that we get from user input for instance, and return area. Okay, so when you execute the code, okay, from here, as you can see here, we have a main function. Okay, and the main function, we define the main function here, as you can see here with main function we have, for instance, from here we have the code to get information from get user input, for instance, for lengths and widths of the rectangle, as you can see here, and we have two variables, okay, and float input, and you can see the message from here, and then when the user inputs some numbers, for instance, it can calculate based on the as you can see here, calculate area function that we have. So we pass the length and width to calculate area like this, and we will get the area number, okay, return area number, and then we can print it, for instance, like this. So simple. So let's see if it works or not. Start debugging and Python debugger, and from here, okay, enter the length of the rectangle, for instance 3, and width of the rectangle like 2, and as you can see here, so simple, and it's working. Another example, we have test number 2. Imagine that we are going to check if a number is even or odd. Okay, so we should have a function first of all for that, checking even or odd numbers, and we should get the number, okay, function to check if a number is even or odd. So first of all, get the number, and then based on the number that we have, we can calculate and return if it is even or odd. As we can see, what is very important here is that we should know how to use if and else codes. As we can see here, if number like this, return this, and else return that. Okay, so for basics, for Python basics, we should know like this, and how to define a function like this. And we have a main function, as you can see here, and when we are going to get information from user, okay, get user input for the number, you can see that we can get the number in variable number, and then check if the number is even or odd using the function from here, okay, and store it in result variable that we have, okay, and just print it. So simple code, and let's see if it works or not. Enter a number, for instance 2, even, and one more time you can execute, okay, like this, and another number, maybe 3, like this, odd number. So as you can see here, it's working with this simple script, Python script. So another example, this program generates Fibonacci sequence, okay, and what is important is just to know that we are going to define a function to generate Fibonacci sequence, and as you can see here, first of all, we are going to get a number, and then with the sequence start with the first 2 Fibonacci numbers, okay, from here, as you can see here, and for I in range 2 to n that we get from here, okay, we are going to, for instance, have a calculation like this, next number, and then append the number, okay, as you can see, Fibonacci sequence, and then append the number that we get from the calculation, and return Fibonacci sequence. But for the main function, we have, as you can see here, input, gets user input for the number of Fibonacci numbers to generate, and then after that pass it to function that we have, and then get the result and print it. So simple. So let's see how it works. Okay, test number 3 F5. Okay, generate, for instance, 10, and you can see the Fibonacci sequence from here. Okay, so it's worked. What is important here is that we know that how to define loops, for instance, for I in range of the number that we have, or just from one number to another number, or in range of numbers that we have, how to define a loop and then return something like this. So it's so simple, okay. And another program, we have to calculate the, for instance, the factorial of a number, and same example, same Python codes, as you can see here. We have a function like this, okay, and we have a number, for instance 2, 10, like this as input, and for I in range of the number that we have plus 1, for example, from 1 to n plus 1, okay, multiply like this, okay, and then return the number. And with the function, we just have to get the number, get user input for the number and then calculate the factorial using the function and then print it. So let's see if it works or not. Another example, so simple, number 5 for instance, and you can see factorial of 5 is 120, like this. Okay, another example, test number 5. As you can see here, the program converts temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit, for instance. Okay, so we get a number, and then we have some calculations. As you can see here, if we are going to multiply by a number or have a calculation like this, we can, so simple, we can do that and return the number. Okay, and the main function, as you can see here, just input, and then with the function we execute to have the number from the function that we defined and then print it. Okay, so simple. Let's see the example, for instance 100, and then the Fahrenheit temperature, as you can see here, to convert it from one number to another that we have. Okay, test number 6, so simple. The program, as you can see, demonstrates different types of loops, and from here we have while loop, which is very important. Sometimes we need to have while loops like this to print something and start with a number and maybe less than 5 print. Okay, as you can see, print, for instance, the number. And another loop that we have, for loop example, we can define for instance a function for that, and for I in range of 1 to 6 print the number. And we have nested loops like this, and you can see that from here we have, for instance, for I in range of, and then for j in range of, we have nested loops like this. So this is how we define nested loops. Sometimes we need to have nested loops in our Python code, so like this you can obviously have a simple code. And another looping through a list, and you have a list, as you can see here. Okay, first of all we should know how to define a list. Okay, like apple, banana, cherry, like this we have. And then for fruits in the list, okay, just print the text that we have, or names that we have, or whatever that we have. Okay, and as you can see, so simple main function that we have, just call while loop, for loop, and nested loop, and loop through list. And let's see how it works. It's so simple to have loops like this. And as you can see, the result, while loop example, okay, for loop example, and nested loop, as you can see here. Okay, and looping through a list example. It's so important, we should know about loops, obviously. And simple Python code, as you can see here, example that demonstrates basic concepts such as variables, inputs, output, conditional statements, and string manipulation. And from here you can see a default main function that we have. Input gets user's name, for instance. Okay, and then prints with to add, first of all add hello to the string, and then we can print it like this. And after that, check if the name contains the letter, for instance A, if A in name. Okay, and print it like this. Okay, else your name does not contain the letter. So it's important, sometimes we need to get input number, for instance, or text. Okay, and then we can generate another text with that, and check if, for instance, there is one character in the text, or whatever we get as input. And then, for instance, with if and else, we should know how to compare two different things that we have. Okay, so simple. Okay, let's see, name, for instance, like this, and you can see your name contains letter A. Okay, another example we have, example number 8, and this program calculates the sum of numbers in a list. And first of all, we have a list, as you can see here, default main function. We have numbers in a list, and we should know how to define numbers in a list. It's so important. And then how to calculate. For instance, we have a variable and we are going to calculate numbers. Okay, sum of numbers in a list. Okay, so we define a function, so simple function. Okay, and by default we are going to have total number 0, and for numbers in numbers, because we pass the numbers, the list, to this function, numbers in numbers, we have the total number and return it. In most cases, in most scenarios that we have, it doesn't matter. We are, for instance, coding for security, for network administration, for automation, and like that. Mostly we use simple Python scripts like this. Pass a number, and then by default we have a number, and then in a loop we are going to calculate something or check something with if and else, and then return another a variable, and then, as you can see here, get and print it. So let's see how it works and if there's any problem with that or not. Yes, obviously there is no problem, and as you can see here, working. Another example, we have test number 9. This program reads a file, for instance, counts occurrences of each word and prints the result. Okay, and what is important here is that mostly when you have configurations or Python codes to read a file and then write anything in the file, with the file name, first we should define a file name, and after that, for instance, as we can see here, with word count word occurrences and the file name, we can calculate. Okay, and we have a function for that, and from here you can see dictionary to store. By default we have nothing in the list, and for instance with the file, when we open a file, as you can see here, so simple to have a Python code to open a file. Okay, the file name, because we have the file name, we pass the file name. Okay, and then in each line check the words, for instance. Okay, split the line into words and then count it, and for the numbers, as you can see here, it can calculate and return word counts. So simple. We should have a sample text.txt file. It's so important to create it, and let's see, for example, from here. Okay, sample text, and I'm going to have test, this, that, and like this. Okay, let's see. Okay, and from here execute, and you can see word counts, and we have, for instance, some words, just once or two or three, or any words that we have in the list. It can calculate based on the words. First of all, split it and then calculate and count it, and then we have the result. So simple. Test number 10, as you can see here. Okay, test number 10, as you can see here, calculates the average grade for each student and their overall class average. And as you can see here, the main function that we have, dictionary to store students' grade, and obviously we need to have a list of users and the numbers, as you can see here, and so simple to configure with the names and numbers. Okay, and then as you can see here, calculate average grade for each student. And as you can see, for student grades in the list, we are going to have average grade, and we have for that we have a function, and it's so simple to return sum of grades and divide by, for instance, the numbers, total numbers that we have in each list for each user. Okay, so simple. So after that, returning the value, and we get the value, and from here we have you can see that we are going to call it from here, class average. Okay, and calculate overall class average like this, and pass numbers from here, and then print it for student average and student item that we have, okay, because we store it here, okay, and we have to print it, okay, to show the information and everything. So let's see, this is another simple one, maybe a little bit complex, but nothing, because we have just a list, the names and numbers, and from here, for each of users that we have or students that we have, we are calculating numbers, and it's there are a lot of information here, and you can, as you can see here, we call a function, and then we have a list, and then we are going to check items in the list. So it's so simple when we are going to have variables and different lists and names and numbers for any reason. Imagine that we have servers and network devices and port numbers. We are going to calculate, for instance, the number of ports that we have, or anything like that. So we can have a code like this, so simple. Another example we have here defines a class for a bank account. Imagine that we are going to have a class, and in a class we have, as you can see here, a bank account. We are first of all going to have account number and balance for that by default. So when you create a bank account from here, the default main function, you are first of all you pass the number, for instance, account number and balance for that by default, and after that you are going to perform some transactions, as you can see here, and for each transaction we are going to have functions in each class. So we have first of all a class, and then we have functions. First of all, to initiate, we have function like this, and other function we have for transactions, as you can see here, for instance, to check the amount and add it, or like this, as you can see here, different functions, and we can call it. Okay, so simple. Let's see. Okay, and you can see first creating a bank account because we have a class by default, and then transactions, as you can see here. Okay, another simple example, we have test number 12, and this program filters even numbers from a list and calculates their squares, for instance. So we have a list, as we can see here, list of numbers, and list comprehension to filter even numbers, as you can see here. So we are going to have some calculation here for even numbers, okay, and we are going to check numbers, and for numbers in the list we are going to check it, for instance, with if, as you can see, but in a single line. So we can have a loop, as you can see here, checking a list, the numbers, and then if, for instance, it's okay, so we have even numbers, okay. And list comprehension to calculate squares of even numbers. So from here, as you can see here, to calculate, but it's important to see that we have a loop here, and then we calculate squares like this, and then we are going to have to show everything. So execute from here, and you can see original list and even numbers and squares of even numbers from here, okay. Okay, another example, test 13, as you can see here, this program finds the maximum number in a list without using the max function, for instance, and you can see the function, we have a list first of all, so we know how to define a list, and then maximum number, we are going to have a function for that, and you can see from here the function with if, not number, for instance, return none for empty list, okay, the first configuration, and then we have max number, okay, assume the first number is the maximum number, and with a loop we have to check it, and with the if configuration and Python code, as you can see here, update the maximum if a larger number is found, for instance, and return the value, and from here you can get the number, return it, okay, and for instance print it. So let's see what happens if I execute this, and maximum number is 21 because we have a list, and you can obviously get the numbers from user 2. Okay, another example that we have number 14, for instance, define a simple Python class. Okay, and we know how to define a class because we had an example with bank account, and as you can see here, we have a class, for instance, with attributes like name and age and variables. Okay, so first of all, we are going to create it, and then, for instance, a function in that and another function in that to do some, for instance, calculations or print something or store something like that. So first of all, we are going to create an instance of the class that we have. Okay, as you can see here, the name and number, and then we call methods on the instance and the functions that we have. So let's see what happens if I execute the script. So simple, and you can see the class and then methods that we have or functions that we have inside it. Okay, we have another example, test 15, and you can see the this program demonstrates basic operations, and sometimes we need to have just basic operations to calculate a number. For instance, first of all, we have a list. We know it's so simple to find a list, and then, for instance, we are going to append the number to the list. Okay, like this. If you are going to add any number or text in a list with the command append, you can insert the numbers, okay, or remove the number, okay, and print the number. And from here you can see, for instance, students, a list of students with numbers, and we are going to, for instance, add a new student to the dictionary. We call it dictionary, okay, like this, to have a dictionary, okay, with names and numbers and like that, and update it, the numbers, for instance, and then delete anything and then print it. So simple, mostly when we are configuring, for instance, some codes for penetration testing or security purposes that we have. First of all, we define lists and dictionary, and then we have, for instance, number of I should say that for instance, routers, switches, servers, IP addresses, and the port number. And after that, maybe we add it or update it, and we have a function to, for instance, connect to that and do something about that. So it's so simple to define it, okay. And let's see if I execute the code, what happens. And from here you can see we have addition and to delete a number and updating, and so simple to do that. Test number 16, you can see here, reads data from a file and manipulates it and writes the result back to another file. So first of all, as you can see here, the input file that we have to read data, okay, how we can read data, open a file and then read, as you can see here with the scripts that we have. Another important thing is that, for instance, we are going to manipulate the data, okay. So we have another function here, convert data to, for instance, uppercase, and reverse the data like this and return it, okay. And then we have we are going to, for instance, manipulate the data to output file like this, and we have, first of all, we should define output file and write data to that, okay, like this. And for that function, we have to write to the file that we defined, and, for instance, the variables that we have. So let's see how it works. From here, Python debugger, and then, okay, there's a problem with the file because we have no file. Okay, just stop it, and let's see, we have the file input.txt, but here we have no file, okay. I'm just going to have the input like this is a test and hello, okay, and save it. And number 16, from here, execute one more time, and you can see the result from here, output, and you can see that the result like this, okay. So it's so simple to work with files like this. Another example we have, let's see what we have, okay, test number 17. Okay, about this test, this program demonstrates basic string manipulation techniques that we have. First of all, define a string like this, and then we are going just to print it, convert the string to uppercase, for instance, convert to lowercase, as you can see here, and replace a substring in the string. Okay, so important. Sometimes we have to change something in the string that we have, okay, to replace something, and we are going to for instance find world and then replace it with Python like this, and then print the result like this, or split the string into a list of words, or for instance, as you can see here, join the words in the list into a single string. Okay, so simple to have the codes like this. Okay, and let's see what happens from here. Original string, uppercase, lowercase, replace words and joined. So okay, another example we have number 18. So simple, just basic operations. Okay, we have two numbers, for instance. The result for that, for instance, perform addition, perform subtraction, or multiplication, okay, like this, division. So simple, but we should know obviously, because we need operations, basic operations. Perform integer division like this, okay, or for instance perform operations, as you can see here, another example, perform another one, as you can see here. So we have basic operations, you know that, so simple. And just we should know the scripts and the commands, how to do it in Python. Okay, and we are not going to waste the time here about everything, but these are just important things to know that. So as you can see, another test 19, the program checks if a number is positive or negative or zero. Sometimes it's important to get a number, for instance, okay, and then check the numbers with if, else, if, and else. It's so important when you have a multiple comparison like this. If, for instance, we have greater than number or lower than number, or else, for instance, printed. So we should know about if, else. It's so important. And when I execute the script, you will see, for instance, the number 10, and this number is positive. Or if I execute one more time, let's see, for instance, 1121, okay, positive, like this, you can see that it's working, and so simple. Another example, we have 20, the final example test. As you can see here, we have a list, okay, mostly in different configurations and Python codes. Mostly we use strings and lists. It's so important to know that how to define it, okay. And for string and strings, okay, as you can see, print it, for instance, and then have a formula for that, okay. And so simple, you can see that, for instance, string apple has 5 characters, and like that to count characters. So simple. So as you can see, we had test number 1 to 20, just basic scripts and commands and codes in Python to say how it works. Okay, you may know that the Metasploitable virtual machine is an intentionally vulnerable version of Ubuntu Linux designed for testing security tools and demonstrating common vulnerabilities. And as you can see here, the links from here, we have the link to download Metasploitable virtual machine, to download and have it up and running, because we are going to test for instance, Python codes and penetration testing, scanning, and like that. So it's so important to download it. So as you can see here, we have 2 links from here, and you can obviously search on the internet or from the website. As you can see here, we can download Metasploitable. And after you downloaded Metasploitable, we have a virtual machine. So let me show you. And if you extract the zip file, okay, you will have a folder like this, and from here you can see the files for VMware Workstation Player or Pro if you install VMware Workstation Player or Pro. With the configuration, a virtual machine configuration file, if you right click and open with VMware Player or Workstation Pro, you can have virtual machine up and running. And let me show you. Okay, you can see virtual machine from here, settings, Okay, let me show you. With 1 GB of memory and one processor or two processor, you can have it up and running. Just 8 GB of VMDK file that we have. When you start it, you will see the page like this, and as you can see, with the username msfadmin, you can log in with the password msfadmin. You can log in, and after that, with IP-ADDR, you can check the IP address like this. And if you type the IP address like this, you will see that it's working, and we have some directories on the web, as you can see here. Okay, PHP MyAdmin, for instance, vulnerable website that we have, for instance. Okay, and of course, with port scanning and security tests and Python hacking, we can test everything in this virtual machine that we have. Obviously, if you have other virtual machines, for instance, in your environments, you are the owner of that type of virtual machine, so you can back up and then test security tests on your virtual machines, but it should be legal, obviously. Okay, first of all, a very simple example that demonstrates how to perform a basic port scan using the socket library that we have in Python. So with Python, first of all, we should import socket library, and as you can see, we can have a function, for instance, port scan. Okay, and we are going to have target, host, and port number. Okay, and in port numbers that we have, for instance, port numbers that we defined, we are going to check the port numbers and the host. So for port in target ports that we pass to the function, okay, we are going to have a socket, as you can see here, client socket. And after that, what is very important is to define a timeout, as you can see here, and try to attempt to connect to the target with try and exception. When we are going to, for instance, have a connection with the host, okay, we can have the Python codes like this to, first of all, to try, and if there is an exception, if there is an error, just for instance, okay, check that there is an error, what type of error we have, and what is the result, as you can see. So first of all, we are going to connect to host and the port number from here, and after that, if it's successful, there is no problem with that, we can, yes, say that it's open and close the socket, as you can see here. And we have target ports and host, as you can see here, in the function, main function that we have. And I'm going to just test the loopback IP address, as we can see here, the local host that I have, first of all, to see how it works, and target ports. As you can see here, different port numbers, I'm going to scan it and then check if it's working or not. So let's see how to execute the code. You know that from here you can run and start debugging, or if you have different Python versions, and if you're going to test it with a Python, for instance, 3 or 3.12, and like that, you can execute the code like this from here, and with the command like Python 3, okay, and then the name of the file that we have. So this is test number 1, and let's see what happens. And as you can see here, there is no problem because we have a socket connection with the local host, and we are checking the port numbers, and you can see that we have different port numbers, but port 22 is open. You can change it, you can change the configuration or host to maybe another IP address, and we have, you know that we have meta exploitable, and we have IP address for that. Okay, so you can test everything on your local Ubuntu operating system, for instance, or Windows operating system that you have, or it's good to say that we can have meta exploitable too, like this, and with the IP address as a host, we can test everything. So from here, you know, target host, okay, we can change it to another IP address like this. Okay, and then save it and one more time try it. Let's see how it works. Okay, and we can see that for this host we have different port numbers, as you can see here, HTTP, SMTP, and DNS and Telnet. As you can see here, some ports are open from here, we can see that. So it's so simple to have a host, just one host if you are going to check, with a range of port numbers. I can change it to, for instance, to add other port numbers. Okay, in the list we can have different port numbers, okay, to see if it's working or not. I add different port numbers, as you can see here, or you can have different ports to scan, and then from here I'm going to check it again, and you can see that, for instance, MySQL, we have MySQL on this virtual machine with the port number, as you can see here, and like this. So simple. Okay, we have another example, test number 2 for pen test and hacking. And I modified the code to perform a port scan on a range of IP addresses, for instance, from local IP addresses that I have, as you can see here, the range from 1 to 10, or any IP address range that you have. You're going, for instance, to check port numbers on different servers, but in a range, IP range, you're going to check it. So simple port scanner for a range of IP addresses, and like that socket configuration. From here you can see that to create a socket object and then attempt to connect to the target host. And from here, what is very important is, from here we first of all should define the range of IP address in the main function that we have, and target ports. For instance, you can add or delete port numbers and have a list of port numbers, for instance, range of port numbers that you maybe you're going to consider to test it, and convert, as you can see here, from here convert start and end IPs to integers. And why is it important? Because we are going to have a start and end IP integer, and from here you can split with the command, as you can see here, and then from one IP to another IP we are going to have for instance IP addresses. Okay, so with the loop, as we can see here, in the range of start to end IP address we have the target, okay, for instance like this, and we can have port scan. So because we have a function, and we should pass IP address and port number, so we can pass the values to the function that we have to see how it works, and port numbers that are open or closed. Okay, so right now let's see how it works. Okay, first of all, Pentest 2, and you can see that from the range that we defined, 127.0.0.1 to 10, it's checking the port numbers, and you can see that the port numbers here, okay, and maybe with the Python code that we have, if you execute, you can grab it too. For instance, open on host. Sorry, I forgot to change it like this. Okay, and you can see, for instance, on the IP addresses that I have in the range, the port number 22 SSH protocol is open, up and running. You can change it to another range, for instance. Okay, from here, if you're going to start and end, for instance, with the IP address in the range of local area network that I have, from here you can change the configuration like this. Okay, and then start, okay, from here 192.168.124, okay, and see how it works. If you have, for instance, hundreds or 200s of servers and hosts that you're going to check it, okay, we can change it like this, okay, or the whole range that I have. So save it and let's see how it works again. first of all with the command like this, scanning ports, and as you can see here, ports are closed and still checking the whole range. Okay, starting with IP address 1 to 254, and you can see that it's working without any problem. So you can scan the whole network if you have, for instance, servers. Okay, you have just servers you are going to check the whole range. You can check it like this. Okay, test number 3. Imagine that we are going to read IP addresses line by line from a file and perform port scanning. Sometimes it happens because we have different IP addresses in different IP subnets and ranges, and simple port scanner for IP addresses read from a file. Okay, so we have the same configuration for socket. Okay, it's same, just to create a socket object and attempt to connect to the target host. Okay, what is very important here is that we have configurations for main function that we have. Okay, and first of all we should define file name. Okay, and we have the file name, as we can see, IP addresses.txt, and you can see from here we have some IP addresses here. Okay, and after that, target ports. Okay, we can change it too. And what is important here is that to read IP addresses from the file and scan each one, first of all we are going to try to open a file, okay, and read the file, as we can see here, with open the file name and read the file as file. And for each line in file, okay, this is a loop, and we are going to first of all get the IP address, or get so target host that we have. Okay, from each line we are going to have it first of all, and then print it like this, the host. We are going to check, for instance, the host IP address like this, and then with the function that we have, port scan. Okay, with the function that we have, we are going to call a function and pass the values, target host and port numbers to check it. And if there's an exception, for instance, while we are going to open the file, okay, if there is an exception, we can handle the exception, for instance, file not found, or there's a problem with that to open it. So simple, there's a loop and reading just a file and then call a function that we have. So let's see how it works. Test number 3. Okay, from here, test number 3, let's see. And you can see that just with the IP addresses that we defined, okay, scanning IP addresses, okay, and from here grab like this, you can see that for IP addresses, okay, open, we have some ports open and some protocols up and running like this. So just a simple Python code. So we can have other IP addresses, for instance, in the range like this. Okay, you can change it, or if you have any IP addresses you're going to check it, you can add IP addresses or change it and save it, and then just execute the Python code. And as you can see here, we are waiting for, okay, and you can see that we have other IP addresses with the port numbers that we are going to check. Okay, test number 4. We are going to check, for instance, a password and see if it is strong enough or not, or we have a weak password. Okay, so first of all, with this code, we are going to define, first of all, a variable like this to get password from user input. Okay, so simple to get with the input command, as you can see here, and store it in a variable, and then check password if it is strong or not. And we are going to print the result, and we have a function which is very important, the function to check password. Okay, and from here you can see the function. First of all, you can have different values, for instance, minimum length requirements like this to maybe check if it is less than 8 or more than 8. Okay, you can change it, for instance, to 10 or 12 like that. Okay, and check if password meets minimum length requirements. So with if, we are going to check the string lengths, okay, that we have as input, and check with minimum lengths, okay, and then return an error like this or a result like this, that the password is too short, or we should have more than that, okay, more characters and like that. So after checking minimum, for instance, minimum lengths like this, if there's no problem, we have another Python code like this to check lowercase and uppercase. And you can see that we have a variable, and we are going to check if it is lowercase or uppercase. And for instance, if not uppercase or lowercase, okay, both of the parameters that we have, uppercase and lowercase, both in the text that we have as password, okay, the string that we have as password, we have an error like this: password should contain both uppercase and lowercase letters. Okay, so we can check it like this. And if password, for instance, contains at least 1 digit, how we can check it? We can have a variable for that and check if any digit for characters in the password, if we have it, okay, and if we don't have any characters, okay, any digit, I should say, we can return password should contain at least 1 digit. Okay, and the next step, we have special characters. You can see that, check if password contains at least 1 special character, which is very important to have at least 1 special character to make it strong, okay, like this. And again, we can check it like this: any character in special characters, okay, 4 characters in password. So simple to have a code like this. And then if there's no special character, we can say that, for instance, password should contain at least 1 special characters, and then return that if the password is strong or not. Because when we pass all the steps that we have, all Python codes that we have, as a result, we can return password is strong, and we can print the result like this. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, let's try it like this. Test number 4. So simple. Okay, password, for instance, test. You can see there is a problem with that. Another test, okay, test 1 2 3 4 test, and you can see there is a problem with that, uppercase or lowercase. I'm going to change it, for instance, test 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 and test, and you can see there's another problem with that. And if we type a password like this, ABCD, for instance, I don't know, some characters like this, okay, you can see the password is strong based on the configuration that we have. Sometimes we are going to have a list of files. For instance, imagine that we have a list of files and we are going to read the file, okay, and then check all passwords to see if the password is weak or strong and like that. So it's so simple to have a code like this to check passwords. Test number 5. Let's see how to perform a basic SQL injection attack against a vulnerable web application using Python's request library. So first of all, I should say that we should have a website, okay, and with Metasploit, as you can see here, we have different pages, okay. From here we have different pages, and from here we have login page of this website, as you can see here, the URL link, okay, with the IP address and the path and fully qualified domain name if you have a server with configuration, for instance, with a host name and DNS and like that in your environment. First of all, just back up and have a backup from any server that you are going to test, and then with another isolated network you can check everything. So imagine that we have this website, and this is the login page, and I'm going to check SQL injection. First of all, I should say that we need to have URL of the vulnerable web application. So I have a variable like this, as you can see here, okay, and then username. For instance, I have just root user or any type of user. I'm just going to check it, for instance, root or admin or any type of user. If you think that yes, maybe with this user I can log in, okay. And then performing SQL injection attack with a function that we have. So pass URL and parameters that we have, for instance username, and with this simple function you can see function, okay. First of all, we should have a payload for that. For SQL injection we have different payloads, but this is the simple one, as you can see here. And for the to construct the URL with the payload, we can have the target URL as what we have like this. For instance, URL and then vulnerable parameter and then payload. Okay, we can have it like this as a target URL, and then we can send the GET request with the malicious payload that we have, okay, or obviously we can change the payload too. If you search on the internet, we have different payloads, okay, and check the response, okay, like this. Check the response and check if the response indicates a successful injection or not, okay. So if there is an error, we can check it. So we have an error indicates that SQL injection is successful or unsuccessful. So simple command, as we can see here. There's nothing, but we have some explanations here too. Okay, let's try it. Okay, test number 5. Let's try it. Test number 5, and you know that the target is this URL link and username, and we don't know the password, but we are going to check with the payload, okay. And you can see that with performing SQL injection attack, it's successful and the application is vulnerable, okay. So if we have another, for instance, from here, PHP my admin, okay, let's try it. Okay, just vulnerable URL, and I'm going to have another one, okay. So I'm not going to delete this one. So you know that when you're going to test with meta exploitable virtual machine, how to check it, okay. Another one with the IP address and PHP my admin, okay. Let's see what happens, and you can see that it's unsuccessful and the application is likely secure, because we have some checking inside the code that we cannot have this type of payload. So there's no SQL injection with this type of payload, as you can see here, unsuccessful. Okay, test number 6, and as you can see here, we have a code, Python code, to check or perform a simple cross-site scripting or XSS attack using Python's request library, as you can see here. And first of all, we have a URL. Okay, you can see that the main function that we have an example like this. Okay, we have the URL link like this, and we are going to for instance, the parameter is query, a type of query, okay, and we are going to check XSS attack, and we have a function for that here. Okay, we define the function with the payload. It's so important, we have different payloads for cross-site scripting, and this is a simple one, just a script to alert something like this, okay. And the target website, we should construct the URL with the payload, as you can see here, the URL, okay, because we have it, vulnerable parameter query, and the payload like this. And after that, send the GET request with the malicious payload, as you can see here, with the GET requests that gets and the target URL that we have it. We can check if the payload is reflected in the response or not. Okay, we can check it and then see that if XSS attack successful or unsuccessful. So simple code, as you can see here. And let's see with test number 6, and you can see that there's no problem right now with the URL link that we have. Another one that we have, for instance, this one. I'm going to comment this one and uncomment another one like this, change it, okay, and one more time to see the application is likely secure and there's no problem with that. So if there is any problem with cross-site scripting, for instance, on this web page and URL link that we have, you can check it. So simple, but we have obviously different payloads for cross-site scripting. This is a simple one to check everything like this. Okay, another example, test number 7, how to use Python's Permico library to perform SSH operations such as connecting to a remote server and execute command. Okay, it's sometimes so important to have SSH connectivity with servers to check username and password and then connect and execute a command like this, or some commands on your remote server that it is accessible. So first of all, for Permico, we should install with sudo pipe install Permico. Okay, and if you do not have the library, you can install it like this. So simple. Okay, pipe install Permico, and after installation completed, we have a Python code, simple Python code, and you can see that first of all, the main function we have, we are going to define host name or IP address, as we can see here, and then port number for SSH. If you have another port number to SSH, you can scan it and check it, and from here you can define it. Okay, and then for instance, a username and password that we know. Okay, we know that this username and password is okay, and we have this type of username and password. And with another function that we defined, SSH connect, we are going to pass host name, port number, username and password. Okay, and you can see the function. Okay, first of all, to create SSH client, as we can see here with Permico SSH client command, we can create a client and automatically add host keys. Okay, with the command, as you can see here, because when you SSH, obviously you have host keys. Okay, for negotiation and for communication between two client and the server. Okay, so we have the configuration for that, and with try, okay, you can connect to host name, connect to the SSH server, for instance, with the port number, username and password like this, and print if connected. If there's no problem, there's no exception. And after that, you can execute the command. For instance, with ls-l, you can maybe have listing files in the home directory like this, a simple command like this. Okay, and so we have a command, as you can see here, to execute the command like this, and then print output, as you can see here. And we have for the output in std out, okay, as a result, and for maybe we have for instance 10 lines or 20 lines, okay, as a result. So for each line with a loop, we can print each line and we'll see the result. So first of all, you can see that we pass the command, okay, with client exec command, okay, and then store it in std out, and then for each line in std out, we are going to show it. And for exceptions, we can define exceptions. For instance, for authentication exception, to print there's a problem with credentials, or for another exception that we have if it fails, for instance, for any reason, okay, we have an exception for that. And finally, if it is successful or not, just close the session and connection with that. So simple. This is so simple to have this type of Python code. Okay, let's see how it works. And you know the IP address that I have here, okay, the IP address is exactly the IP address of Metasploitable. Okay, that telnet port and SSH port is open. Okay, I'm going to check it. So test number 7, and let's see, connected to SSH server, output of commands, and you can see the output of command like this. Or you can change the commands, okay, it doesn't matter what type of command we have right now, but we can just have different commands from here. Okay, so I'm just going to have another test like this. For instance, you are going to check IPADDR like this. So simple. Just execute the command and you will see the result like this. Okay, so with Paramico we have this option to SSH to servers and execute a command. Okay, we have another example, and in this example we are going to read IP addresses from the text file that we have here and attempt to SSH into each one using the MSF admin, for instance, username and password, or with the username, MSF, and the password from a file, as you can see here. Okay, so we have first of all IP addresses. Okay, you can see that, and the passwords that we guess that we are going to connect to servers with these type of passwords or any list of passwords. So you are going to check your server, for instance, or any type of server. If you're for instance, imagine that you forgot username and password and you don't want to recover, and you're just going to test like that, or maybe you're legally are going to attack to your own server. Okay, like this. Okay, have passwords and then try it like this. So first of all, you know, the Paramico that we are using, the code, as you can see here, so simple, and same like the Python code that we had for SSH connections, and you know that how to have create SSH clients and add host keys and connect to SSH server. But what is important here is that a main function that we have here, and first of all we are going to define port number 22, and by default username, for instance, MSF admin like this, or root or admin or any type of username that you have. Okay, and try to open the file IP addresses and read the file. As you can see here, try to open the file and read the file. And for IP addresses, we are going to store the lines that we have in a variable. Okay, and then if there is any problem with the file, for instance, file not found error, you can have an exception for that. Another important thing is to read passwords from a file. Okay, so try to open the file passwords.txt and have a list of passwords, okay, to read from a file. And then if there's an error, if there's an exception, maybe file not found, or there's any problem like that, we have the exception here. And for passwords, you can see that we have the passwords, okay, because we have a list of passwords, and for each of them we should have each password and each IP address. So we are going to attempt SSH connection with each IP address and password combination. So we have two loops, and you remember nested loops. Okay, so for IP address, in IP addresses lists that we have, okay, first of all have the IP address, okay, get the IP address, and then for each password, okay, for each password and characters for each password, we can SSH connect with the IP address and port number, username, and password. So we have IP addresses like this and passwords like this, and let's see what happens when we are going to SSH to multiple IP addresses with different passwords but same username. Test number 8. Okay, from here, test number 8. Let's see, attempting to SSH to IP addresses first of all, and you can see if there's a failure with the login with username and password. You can see that for username and password, okay, right now there is no it's not successful, and there's a problem with that. And let's see what happens with another IP addresses that we have. It's attempting to SSH, have SSH connection, and you can see that So you can see that login successful with the IP address, username and password that we have. So it's so simple to have just IP addresses and passwords, and with a username we can have a combination of a username, password and IP address and SSH to servers to check everything like this. Okay, we have another test number 9, and in this Python code we are going to check HTTP response, and you can use the server header in the HTTP response. You may know that to determine the type of web server running on port 80, for instance. If the port is by default 80, if we change it, we can have different definitions in the Python code. But in this example, we have library requests library, okay, and then we are going to define URL, as you can see here, with the IP address or fully qualified domain name, okay, like this, and then the path, okay, like this. And then another important thing is the function definition, okay, with the check server type definition, function definition, we have first of all to try to connect, send a GET request to the URL that we have. So we have the response like this, and then we can check the response, check if server header is present in the response. Okay, we can check it like this, and if server in response headers, okay, we have a response as a result, and we can check the headers, okay, with this type of Python script. And with server header, okay, we get the header, and then we can print it. For instance, the port is running, okay, and the server is running on port 80, and the result of that type of header, okay, if there's any problem and we cannot connect or header is not present like that, we have else for that. So with if and else, we can have this type of checking an exception for any reason. If HTTP request failed, for instance, or there's no connectivity, there is an internet problem or network problem, we can have an exception like this. So simple, a function like this. And let's see what happens if we check, for instance, this URL, and you know the URL like this, and meta-exploitable web server that we have, okay. So from here, test number 9, okay, from here, test number 9, and you can see that there is no problem with that connectivity, the server running on port 80, and it's running Apache 2.2.8 and Ubuntu, as you can see here. If we have other web servers and we are going to gather more information and see what type of web servers are running, if it is present in the header or not, we can check it like this. So simple with the script that we have. Okay, we have another example and a simple Python script that performs a basic port scan on a specified range of ports. Sometimes we need to define a range, start from this port number to another port number, okay, for a given IP address, okay, we get. So with the, you know that with library socket we can have connections and check if the port is open or not. And as you can see here, test number 10, in this test we have a function, okay, so we get IP address, start port number and end port, okay, and for port numbers in the range of start to end, okay, we are going to have a socket connection and a definition for timeout, for instance, to wait, for instance, 1 second or 1 minute or 10 seconds like that, and try to have first of all connectivity with the IP and port number for each port number. So we have a loop, as you can see here, for each port number in that range. We are going to try to have connection and check the result. If it is open, okay, the result equals 0. You can see that it's open, and else the port is closed, and close the socket, okay. And then another exception that we have, for instance, for any type of errors that we have, you can see that any type of errors. We can have exceptions, maybe host could not be resolved, or there's a problem with the connection to the server, or like that. Okay, so we have a main function just to get IP address from user. Okay, enter IP address, for instance host name or like that, and then the start port number to convert it to integer, as you can see here, and end port number, and start the function to execute the code like this. So let's see, it's so simple. Okay, let's see how it works. Okay, for instance, this Python code and host name or IP address, maybe local host. Okay, I'm just going to check everything. Port number maybe 1 to, for instance, 30. And as you can see, so fast, there's a socket connection between local IP address and the remote IP address, and we have port numbers as you can see here. Or we can have another example, okay, with meta exploitable and the IP address we have here. Okay, let's see how to change it. And obviously you know that from here, okay, there's no need to change it because we just get inputs like this and just IP address. Okay, I should type it, maybe 191.68.124.162, and start from port number 1 to 50. Let's see what happens. And checking port numbers, because we have network connectivity right now, it's not localhost. There's a network connection between Ubuntu that we have and another IP address, as we can see here, checking port numbers and have connections and check if it is open or closed. But there's a problem right now, because we know that on meta exploitable we have telnet and SSH ports, for instance, and I can see that the IP address is 216 and I have the wrong IP address here. Okay, one more time. Yes, this is the IP address, or 216, yes, 216. Okay, and 1 to 50. Okay, so fast, because with that type of IP address, okay, you can see that this IP address, because there is no host like with this IP address, or if we have any type of host, it's so slow to respond. Okay, you can see that we have all ports closed, and that was so slow. But with this one, we have it up and running. You can see the port numbers open. Okay, another simple example that we have test number 11. And imagine that we are going to check port numbers, but based on IP addresses that we have. Okay, we have the file like this, and in this code, we are going to check IP addresses. Okay, so as you can see here, try to open the file and read each line, okay, to get IP address. If there is an exception, you can see an error like this. Okay, you can have the configuration like this, and start port number and end port number input get from user. Okay, and then for each IP addresses in the list that we have from here, and port numbers that we have, okay, the port numbers we are going to have checking for here with a socket connection, and checking if the port is open or not, and return open ports like this. Okay, so we have a range of ports and we pass it, and the IP addresses based on each IP addresses. Okay, we pass the IP address and range of ports, and from here we have ports. By default we have no ports like this, as you can see here, and in a loop we have range of ports, and from, for instance, X to Y we are going to have socket connection and check the port if it is running or not. So simple script, as you can see here. So let's see how it works with the IP addresses. Okay, and okay, start with the port number maybe 1 to 30, and based on the IP addresses we have in the file just so fast, checking the all ports at the range 1 to 30, and you can see, for instance, port number 22 is open on these IP addresses, or for another maybe host that we have other ports, or one more time maybe 1 to 1024. Okay, and you can see that it's so fast, and we can have a connection and check the port numbers like this, so which type of ports we have up and running, kind of like that. Okay, we have another example, test number 12, and we are going to check for the presence of common security headers in the HTTP response headers of a website. So for the main function, we are going to get URL, okay, just maybe full qualified domain name, or if it is HTTP with the IP address like that, to get URL, and then check for headers. Okay, and we have a function, you can see that simple function, and by default to check headers we are going to check, for instance, XSS protection, cross-site scripting protection, and content type option if we have, X-frame option if we have, content security policy, and transfer security like this. Okay, the headers, as you can see here, in a list. Okay, and then try to first of all connect to URL, okay, as you can see here, to have a response, and check in the response for headers in the list. We should check if the header in response, we have the header in response or not, and then we can print it, okay, with this response and header we have it like this, or if it's not present, okay, we can say that yes, there's nothing, okay, related to that. An exception we have if there's failure with HTTP connection and like that. So simple script to check just some headers, okay. And let's see what happens, okay, here if we are going to test number 12. And first of all, URL, and from here we have the URL like this. For instance, I'm going to check it. Okay, you can see that there is no definitions or configuration for cross-site scripting and content type and frame like that. And another example, for instance, okay, from here we have imagine that we have this, and you can see that right now there's no header for that. But if you have other maybe websites, or if you installed and configured Apache Nginx, or imagine WordPress or IIS, you can check everything, the headers like this. Or if you have configuration for security, you can check it if the header is present or not, and check it like this. So simple script to check headers.